Hey, welcome to the Cam Otis Show, special episode number 200. And for those of you that are counting, that's 200. That's no small task. That's a crap load of people that we talk to. I mean, some of them are repeats. We've had a few on that are multiple times. But you know what? I want to start the show off with a congratulatory toast, Camden. A little
Cheers.
little
There we
whiskey
go.
toast there. Who'd have thought 3+ years ago that, damn, that's some good whiskey, that we would stick around and continue to do this and make it such a priority. There's been a little bit of just stubbornness to keep it going. There's been some folks that have helped us out, and one of them, and now I'm drawing a blank on his name. I knew I should have wrote it down. King, Fireside Chat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Dan King.
Dan,
Yeah, Dan.
Dan King. Yeah,
We just know a lot of Dans. That's why you're getting confused.
yeah, that's probably what it is. I do know a lot of Dans. Dan King he worked with us for about 4 or 5 months and really helped us shape our show and bring it into a little bit more maturity. And then shout out to Travis Johnson. I know you and Norman, our producer, have done a lot of work with him in the last few months to help the show, go from just kind of a couple of guys sitting around talking to a bit more professional and getting the word out and sharing ideas and thoughts with people. So, yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to the great state of Wyoming for having a great population of pronghorn antelope up there, because that's where this all started. Was you and I up just BS and hanging out in Wyoming in Laramie for 3 days, and then the drive back. I think you said something along the lines of, are we going to just talk about doing this thing, or are we going to actually do it? And then sometime down the line, we actually went and did it. You got tired of just me talking about it all the time and pushed us to do it. So thank you to the great state of Wyoming and for you to push us onto this, because it's amazing. 200 episodes. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. When you think about, what's funny, and all the podcasters will tell you to do this. It's kind of funny to go back and listen to some earlier shows and from the way the audio sounds to the video to the just what we say and how we do it. But one thing that I think is, as I say that, one thing we started on a whim the very beginning in our first show, because I just felt like throwing it out there to test my son, was the "What did you learn?" And you know what? That's become a mainstay of our show. We have guests that come in and say, "Hey, I've listened to these shows, and yep, I really like that the way you wrap up the show with the 'What did you learn?'" And there's, when you think about that in life, and one of the things, kind of as we ramble on in this anniversary show.
Hey, we get a ramble on this one. No one can stop us here.
That's right. That's right. But you know what? In the description of our show, we put lifelong learners. And when you think about it, the fact that at the end of every show, take 200 shows, 200 hours of shows and guests, and sometimes just you and I mean, there's probably 15 shows that it's just you and I. But every one of them, we've asked that question of everybody on the show, because I think that shows that, we really are lifelong learners. It's really about what else is there to learn? What else is there to understand? How can I do this better? How can I be better, a better person, a better human right now by learning more about it, about whatever. So, and that's been
and
the
I think
mainstay of our show too, right?
yeah, and as like you said, you started off almost as a way just to test me. I gotta say, as we went on, I came to embrace it more and more because it did kind of feel like that at first. I'm like, all right, son, what'd you learn? You know, show me the homework type of thing.
Yeah.
And as it went on, I I caught myself in episodes where I didn't feel like I was learning something, and I realized that how much room I have to grow, rather, in terms of listening and conversation and interviewing. That like if you could sit down with somebody and talk with them for an hour and you don't learn anything, the hell are you talking about? Like you weren't really talking about much, obviously. And
Oh, you were
I
doing
think
all
that
the talking,
also
not any listening, is what you were doing.
Exactly. And that's, I think, the other piece there is like learning that in every conversation, you should be looking to learn something. And, I don't know where I heard that originally years and years and years ago of, well, I guess not that many years, but I heard that it's like you should go into every conversation expecting or looking to learn something from the other person, assuming that they know something that you don't know.
Mm.
And I think that's such a big piece of having good conversations, and of course it applies into our podcast like that. But then I think the interesting thing that I've also found is the episodes where I can't even pick anything because it's you learn so much. And I think that's a decent segue to get into some of our favorite episodes and talk about that. But I think of so many, and this one's on my honorable mentions list. It makes me think of the episode. I know I'm sneaking some of the honorable mentions. You can't stop me. But the of episode 181, No Fallen Heroes with Lee Simmons and Wiz Buckley. I
Yeah.
have never wanted to not talk so much in my life because the amount of information that was coming out in the stories and the emotion in the story, everything, it just was so much that I almost felt like I didn't learn anything because I learned so much. I was in like analysis paralysis mode at that point.
Yeah, yeah, there has been quite a few of those in that sense of like crap. Because you do the same thing. I know we take notes during the show, and some of these guys that we talk to and gals, it's like when you get to the second page, kind of I would say for me, it's average of 75% of the page, right? In my little notebook, right? It's not an 8F11. It's a notepad, right? Most shows are half to 75% of the page, but there's been some that have been 2 full pages. And when I think of that, when I think of the life lessons and it's like, holy crap, I need to respect our guests' time and wrap this show up. Robert H. Owens always comes to mind. He, you know, if you go back and you look at all of our shows, that is the longest show. And I can tell you this right now, we could do another 2 hours with him. We could have done another 2 hours that day, because he is living the life of I want to help people. And because he's gone through so many experiences and pushed himself in so many different ways, the life lessons that he shared, and that was episode 74. And it was just an amazing show. And I'm still in touch every so often. Robert will send me a note. He sent me a note the other day. He is part of a crew that is rowing across the Atlantic in December. I think there's 4 of them that are rowing. It says they'll get 2 hours of sleep at a time, or it's one of those cycles of just like, dude, man. And this is the guy, to just brag on Robert, one of the oldest guys to do, I don't remember how many marathons, but he is doing this rowing thing, and still is struggling to get his full lung capacity back from the Rona.
Mm-hmm.
70, I think he's 70 now, 68, 70, somewhere right in that range.
Yeah.
And is he crushes men that are men and women that are half his age in performance. And I'm not talking about the fat people that can't get out of a chair. I'm talking about people that are, decent
Marines.
decent living, in their 30s and 40s. And Robert goes out there and crushes them because he is so focused on being who he is, and not in a yeah, look at you, you young whippersnapper, I whooped your ass, but in a look what you can be, look what you can do sort of way, and let me show you how you can be and do these things. That's a special thing. And matter of fact, I told Robert the other day when he was telling me about his future rowing escapade that we'll schedule the show for shortly after he gets back from that, because we're due to have him back on the show. Because folks, if you haven't listened to episode 74 with Robert H. Owens, man, all I gotta say is anytime you're feeling like, yeah, well, I don't know, it's not, I'm going to skip leg day, I'm not going to go to the gym, I'm not going to do my walk or whatever, listen to episode 74. You will get up off your ass and perform, believe me.
Yeah, that was on my list too, and not my long list and my short list, to be fair, Dad. But I think the only thing I have to add there, and this is amazing. Maybe we got to get a T-shirt or a medal or something that we could start gifting. Maybe we do this once every 100 episodes, as we look forward to the future. But how the heck did he steal the title of best storyteller when we had JJ on the show? Like, I'm blanking on his last name, but is it JJ? It's not
JJ Peterson.
Peterson, yeah. Because I want to say Miller because I'm thinking of Don Miller. But no, the fact that we've had such amazing people on the show, and Robert H. Owens is still by far the best storyteller, because and I think there's probably some other examples on this of the bad version of this, but we all know that, like, the old man with a lot of stories. I don't think I've ever met an old man with a lot of stories that has polished them all up to the point where they're flowing great, that you're engaged the entire time, you're learning something, all of those different things, that it's like the way he would tell all of those different stories through his life. There's a reason that you say we could easily go 2 more hours on that, because all we had to do was ask him, hey, what did you do between June and August when you were 25? And he'd go, well, Camden, let me tell you. And he would probably dive in on some crazy freaking story that has a life lesson that he still holds to that day too. Like, he just, in every facet of the storytelling experience, he checks all the boxes. It's amazing. And yeah, that is, I think, one of the best episodes we've done. And because his ability to tell the stories and to weave the lessons into those stories, and again, kind of like you're saying, like, not in a like, you young whippersnappers, you should know this, or everyone listen to me type. He was just telling us the stories just like he would anyone else, and that authenticity just made it for such an amazing experience talking with him.
Yeah, well, and I fondly remember watching you as he told those stories and watching you go, wow, and writing as fast as you could on everything. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of makes me want to go back and listen to it yet again, because there's so much value in that show that it's just an amazing Robert is an amazing guy, and anybody gets to meet him in person, you're pretty damn lucky. If not, then listen to episode 74, because yeah, it is like I said, if you're feeling sorry for yourself, listen to that episode and you will get up off the couch and start moving forward, because it's not fake hoorah stuff. Like, because I hate that stuff. I hate the false motivation is the key to graduation. Hate it. We used to joke that I learned to hate that in air assault school 40 years ago. But I will tell you, if you want somebody to get you going, and let you know that you're okay. You just got to get up and get moving again. That it's that show with Robert. It was powerful. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And
I want to add on to that. Like you're saying, it's not that like the fake motivation, like those type of things. And it's one I gotta admit, I don't watch a whole bunch of his videos, but I have seen him. Is like the David Goggins, or it's just like, and the what's the Joe Rogan phrase is like conquer your inner bitch, and like those type of things. Like, okay, there's a place for all that kind of stuff. When we say that Robert H. Owens is motivating, it's not a like get up, quit being a pussy. Da, 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 da. It's none of that. It is just like you hear him talk and you are inspired to do more, and that is so different than what the motivation you get out of other people.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, and like I said, we could probably talk about him all day. And you mentioned our buddy JJ, and I'd written down that show, episode 62, not as one of my top ones, but one of my honorable mentions, or whatever we want to call it, because JJ is an amazing storyteller, an amazing marketer. And the thing that I loved about that show was his authenticity with us. I would say 99% of our guests are authentic. But what was different about JJ is, here's a guy who's top of his game, fairly well known out in the world, the business world, senior VP or something for Story Brand with Don Miller. And he had, I mean, the way I'll portray it is, he had a revelation on the show, and that shows how authentic of a man he is. It was in his kitchen. It was during the Rona still. And he was who he is with us. And when we asked him that question of what was the origin and where did it come from, he was like, oh my God, we got to end the show so I can call my dad right now. I mean, it was that kind of a revelation that he had. And I thought that's a tribute to you and I as hosts, but it's also a tribute to JJ, because he wasn't BSing. He was being his true, authentic self, which I'm a huge fan for. Everybody who knows me knows there's only one me. There's only the authentic me. There's no fake ones going on. So when we have somebody like JJ who just bought full into the show, bought full into the questions, and there was no boundaries. There was nothing that was off limits. It was, I'm here to be part and serve and learn from you guys, just like we learned from him. And that was, yeah, that's why I always speak of JJ fondly. I always will, because it was just really a neat show to have him on, and in that time frame too, because the Rona had gone, it spiked, and then it had come down, and we were back up in a spike, and they were dealing with the whole remote thing in their business. And the fact that he took time out to jump on the show with us was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that it's funny to think, because he's got to be up there. And I was thinking this as I was going through our shows, of like the biggest name we've had on the show, and I think he's got to be up there. I don't know who I would necessarily give that title to.
Jeff,
we'll make those medals for
Jeff Bosley is another one. I would say Herb Lang, Flight Time Lang.
I think Herb gets the title if I had to give it to somebody, because I mean, he's Flight Time. Come on.
That's right.
But you talked about JJ's. One of the ones that, and this was one of my honorable mentions, was Travis Rosback with Hydro Flask. And it's the reason it sticks out for me is almost the exact same reasons. And I swear, y'all, we didn't prep this together, at least, but he was so authentic in going through his story, such a genuine person, and displayed such a genuine curiosity for everything we were asking. He's one of those where it's like, when you asked him a question, he would answer it and he would give you the authentic answer, but then you could also tell that he was curious why you were asking it and what made you think of that. And like just the layers of thought that he brought into it was amazing. And then from the little bit more of the selfish side, kind of like you said with JJ, of like what we were able to get out of him, of I mentioned this on almost every one of our podcast pre-calls when we have someone on for our 15-minute call before we get them on the show. When we're talking about what did you learn, we always talk about there's this variety. And I think your example is usually I should have filled up my coffee, should have had a second pin, those type of things. That's this end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is Travis Rosback, who went there, and we were talking about Hydro Flask, and he's been talking about diving and dive tanks and all of the symbolism, all these different things. And I think I literally just saw it up on his shelf and went, "Hey man, that original Hydro Flask looks just like a dive tank to me." I've never dove before, or scuba dive, or whatever the heck the bass tense is of it, but it's like that looks the exact same to me. And he paused for a moment and said, "Holy crap, you're right. I had never realized that I took that same design and made it into it and applied the same engineering capacities of the dive tank that make dive tanks successful and applied it to the Hydro Flask." It was amazing to see that happen in real time. And I think as much as we joke about those being like the selfish, like pat ourselves on the back thing, it's also just this really cool affirmation of like, that's how you and I approach the show. Every single episode we approach with that type of intent. And it's really cool when that intent comes out like that. Like that is just about the most perfect representation of the wrap up. What did you learn that you could really come up with?
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. And yeah, that was just remembering that and the look on Travis's face when you pointed that out to him. I can remember that too, and him just going, yeah, you could see oh my God, really? all this time, and I never realized that, and there's a little bit of the mental aspect of that. You're so close to it, you never see it in a broader picture. And the other piece that I would throw at that is the something you're comfortable and familiar with can very well transfer into something else. And I think that's Travis in the Hydro Flask design. He was a big time scuba diver. That was one of his passions at the time. And I think part of a revenue generating, I was going to say business, but I think he was actually working for somebody at the time when he came up with the idea for Hydro Flask. So yeah, it's an interesting tie-in on how our minds work. So, so looking at my list, one that struck a chord for me was just about a year ago with Elton Johnson. So Elton Johnson, we had on show 110. Yeah, Elton is a veteran, and we had him on to talk about his business. I think his business, I don't even remember for sure anymore, was like placing like recruiters, placing people in consulting gigs like that. But we had him on right when Afghanistan went down, collapsed.
Literally 24 hours, less than 24 hours after it.
And Elton had spent a lot of time in Afghanistan as the guy who connected linguists and local nationals to the needs of the U.S. military. So he was very personally tied to the events that were going on in Kabul and throughout the country. And again, this is a guy who said, if it's okay, I don't want to talk about my business. I want to talk about this problem set. I want to get the word out. And it was a really powerful and emotional show because the people that he was talking about weren't just some images of who knows, another person or not even when you watch the news and something bad happens on the news, it's not real, right? Because it's on the TV, it's on the internet, right? It's on your computer screen. It's not real until you see somebody that because we can go, oh, that's terrible for what's happening there. Oh my God, that's terrible. And then we turn the TV off and we go about our day. What Elton was experiencing was the true tragedy of what was happening on the ground in Kabul and Afghanistan, because I believe it was over 100 people that were within his network that he had helped connect in various times with the U.S. military to get them jobs and various aspects, from, like I said, interpreters to other things. And he was watching that unfold and was here getting phone calls from these people and hearing the voice and the fear in their voice on the other end of the line of needing the help and wanting to get out of the country, because these people feared for their, and rightfully so, feared for their life, and that personal connection he had to what was going on. And it was a really powerful, emotional show. I would say, for me, one of the more emotional shows, probably the most emotional show that we've had to date, because it was real stories of real people that was happening right then. I mean, he was like, I'm going to take a break from the phones to talk to you guys.
Mhm.
And when I say he was taking a break from the phones, what he was doing was he was talking to the people on the ground in Afghanistan and talking to the State Department in DC, which is where he is, and trying to work to help these people to get them out of Afghanistan, because the Taliban had a kill list, and I'm sure they still do, and they still are, and we just don't hear about it, because that's just the way that regime is. That no bullshit in the side, no touchy feely. They'll make best. No bullshit. They kill people that don't believe the way they believe. That's the way they work. And you're a fool if you believe otherwise. And Elton knew that truth. So it was really a heavy burden on his heart.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stands out to me when I think back to that episode, and there's a couple other episodes that share this. One of the ones with Pete Turner, as it also comes to mind, is as the military brat, I got one very specific perspective growing up of what you were doing. And I didn't have a full understanding of what it was until I was older. I just thought army. And then as I got older, I understood the difference of the big army versus like a lot of the work that you were doing. And then I got older and I started understanding politics and the political aspects of it. And then what that conversation, other conversations opened up my eyes to is the amount of politics and upper level leadership inside of the military. And really what I'm talking about when I talk about all those different things is, if you stick in any one of those one viewpoints, it's really easy to understand what's happening in those extremely complicated situations. It's really easy. You're a military brat. It's good guy, bad guy. My dad's the good guy. He's going over there to fight the bad guys. Simple, right? Then you change your perspective. Something things keep changing and changing and changing. And the reason I'm talking about those different perspectives is because as I grew up in that life and, of trying to learn more and more and more about these complicated problems, what I found was that there's some pretty conflicting ideas a lot of the time. And what that conversation did to me is it squared a lot of those conflicting ideas. It helped me to understand that it's, someone like, I keep going back to the Pete Turner episode. I know that's not the one we're talking about, but what he was talking about the first time we had him on, we were talking about building up the farmers in Afghanistan and that work, and how that is gone. Like it's fucked up to say, but like that's gone now, what he did. But a lot of that is probably gone at this point because of the changes that have happened since we had that conversation and since he was there. His efforts were still good. And the gap there, I think, is something that we as a nation had as a conversation after the fall in Afghanistan, because it was something that a lot of soldiers had to deal with. And so it became a little bit more of a public conversation. But it's that you could be doing something good and doing something that your individual actions are all good and everything you're doing has the right motivations, all of these different things. And then there could still be a bad outcome at the end. And that bad outcome could be so far outside your control that you can't even comprehend that's outside your control, because it goes so far up a leadership chain to the politics side of things. And all of that gets messed up. And I think that conversation helped me to square a lot of those conflicting ideas. And then one of the things I just appreciated so much about what you and Elton did in that conversation, because this doesn't always happen, is you guys let me come in as the naive civilian and say, hey, so here's what I read in the newspaper. Hey, so here's what I read in the newspaper. Not things that could be insulting to people. Like there's some headlines out there that if I was just like, hey, Dad, I read this about your work in Bosnia, you'd be like, well, freaking bullshit. But it's like, you got to understand, I'm coming from a place where that is what I heard. And that is what my understanding of the world is. And taking that and allowing me to come in as the, naive civilian and bring what my civilian perspective is of it, and then mix that, and then really just square what seems like conflicting ideas, but they're really not. And the reason I know I'm ranting a little bit on, but the reason I think that's so important is because it shows that through a conversation, you can find common truths on things, and things are so nuanced and complicated. But if you just try to challenge those ideas over and over again with those different perspectives, you can find a more concrete understanding of something that's very, very complicated. And that's the thing you and Elton did so much for me in that conversation, and I think secondhand through a lot of people I've talked to about those problems since then, because it's not just a patriotic, like everything we did is right take on things. It wasn't everything we did was wrong take on things. It was the real take. And that's what I enjoyed so much about that conversation, and other conversations we had with a lot of veterans about, those complexities and stuff. And that's what I got so much out of that conversation.
Well, that's great to hear. And yeah, and Elton was very open to that. And I thought that was great because I'm hoping I'm explaining for those of you who haven't watched that episode, how powerful it was and how emotional he was in that moment. These people he considered his personal friends, and on top of that, I would even say one step more as a protector of them. So it was a very emotional show. Now, I'm going to shift to our number one downloaded show, which you and I have had this conversation, I don't know how many times, but we're fascinated by it, and that's Shackleton. And the name of the episode was Shackleton's Dream. We've actually done retakes on it twice, which are a lot of you have listened to those episodes too. And what's really interesting about it is the story of Shackleton is such an amazing leadership story. But I'll put out there in my always being authentic, it's not like we put a whole lot of thought into, maybe in 2 weeks we should do this discussion. Truthfully,
right,
what happened?
Let me reread Endurance real quick. Like there was none of that.
Yeah, it was. Oh, hadn't you just finished reading that, Camden, like a few weeks before? And I was like, oh, I've got it right here on my shelf. Why don't we? Let's just talk about Shackleton and the journey of his men and the Endurance and the Endurance, the ship, and the book. And it's really an amazing story. And I think part of the reason that show is there's a couple of reasons that show is so popular on the overall Cam Otis shows is one, if when people come to our show for leadership lessons, most people who think about leadership have at least heard of Shackleton and have some vague familiarity with the story, whether or not they've read his memoir or the book Endurance, the biography, or historical document, the whatever you would call that book. It's not really a biography, but that's just a history book on what happened. It's familiar with most people who have a curiosity in leadership. That's number one. Number two is we talked about Shackleton's leadership and how it applies to today and how it applies to how you handle things today and how you handle your team today and what you can do to have that kind of an organization that Shackleton did, and what were the elements of that, the elements of success that he created in that environment prior to and during. And it's an amazing thing when you think about it and how that story panned out. It is a true story of survival. It is a true story of leadership. And the lessons there are so profound and frankly so obvious that I think people enjoy that show because of that. They go to it because of the familiarity of the name, but they get a lot out of it because of how we discussed Shackleton's exploits, if you will, and how the team stayed together. But the team stayed together not just because of his leadership in the moment, but because of his leadership in the beginning and how he created that.
And I think the really interesting thing, podcast I listened to, a comedy podcast, Shackleton got brought up once, so they're making a lot of jokes. Didn't he like not even get there? Like he did all these different things. Like have you gone back? He failed the 3 expeditions before, all that kind of stuff. And I think the interesting thing there, because I was thinking about that, I was like, it was organizational transformation despite failure. Like their goal changed completely. They failed on their goal. They did not get there, but they still became the team that they could, and I think it's a really important lesson for business, think about it in terms of rugby, like we normally do, that even if you fall short of your goals, of your set goals, you still have these other pieces that are so important. It's about the team. It's about the organizational transformation that you can get. It's about the development. It's like, Ted Lasso. I'm finally watching, by the way, so you can start referencing Ted Lasso on the podcast. If y'all don't know, about a year and a half ago, I know you already forgot it all, right? Yeah. Well, but it's like it's not about winning or losing. It's about the development of the young men inside the team. And I think it's like when you approach it as a leader like that, and when winning is almost secondary to the team itself, you can get these amazing outcomes even if you don't actually win. And also a lot of the time when you do that inside your organization, you create an environment where you can go win because you're not focusing just on victory itself. Talking about like amazing stories, I think going through our list of episodes, one that came to mind, very recent show, was the one with Charlie Green. And what it really went back to is his stories were amazing and so touching. And then what he's doing with Memento is also so amazing. And it's all built around what you and I have been doing for 200. Spoiler, this is recorded after some of our 201, 2, and 3 episodes, but over 200 episodes now at this point. And we go through and we always say it's about the story. When we talk with our guests on our pre-calls, we say it's about the story. We want to hear your story and all those different things. And Charlie kind of summed that up. He's got the business model there that is around stories and how important stories are. And so that was one that I really wanted to revisit for this episode, because it's so close to our purpose around the show of just going through people's stories like that.
Yeah, I agree. And Charlie, it's Memento is a really interesting company, what he's doing. And the fact that he's capturing those stories is so powerful that I'm excited to see. We kind of joked about it with him on the show, but there's a lot of truth to it. It's circling back around in a year or so and seeing what's happening with it, because I think there is, even with the what is it, 160 characters on Twitter or something like that, whatever it is anymore. The Instagram with the pictures and the reels and everything's short version, because we want to jump to the next thing. I think there's so much power in what Charlie is doing with Memento, and having that opportunity to sit down and can you imagine if your great grandfather to Pawpaw, if you had the video to watch, I mean, I can even think about it. If I had the video to watch him tell me a story about wildcatting oil rigs in the plains of Oklahoma in the 1930s, that would be pretty cool to have for, and not just your generation, but the Odie, my grandson following on, and your kids, and for them to be able to have access to something like that is pretty unique. I mean, we get a lot out of a textbook, but it's never personal in a textbook, is it? And it's not. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with the news, right? You watch the news and go, oh, that's terrible. You open up a textbook and you read about history. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's kind of cool. But when your grandfather or your great grandfather, somebody that that you were a descendant of, is telling you the story, wow, that's pretty cool. So good on you, Charlie, man. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for Memento.
Yeah, and I know we got to get wrapping up here. I got to add the one other one that I starred as my favorite three, and I know we did a lot of honorable mentions, so the favorite three is a little out of whack now. And you're probably hearing a little gumbo wumbo back there. They're in the studio since it's a family episode. But the other one that I had was episode 151, which was accepting gratitude. And that was one that you and I did. This is actually right before my wedding, which I hadn't actually done that math on it being that important. But that's a whole another rabbit hole you could probably go down on that perspective. But we talk about so much about like, what did you learn? That's such a fundamental aspect of the show, being lifelong learners. That was one of the ones where it's like you and I feel like we both went on a little bit of a journey through that episode of neither of us are especially fond of accepting gratitude. And it's always I just did my job type of thing. And I think we went through and we kind of challenged each other's ways of thinking on that. And I learned so much from that. And it's something that since then I've been working on, of just trying to accept more gratitude from people rather than wanting to shell up and say, I was just doing my job, because gratitude is an important thing. And, that's what we went through on that episode.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was a good one. I probably skipped over it because it made me uncomfortable because like I said, I'm authentic. And I'll be uncomfortable, and that's why I probably even forgot about that show. Because it was like, okay, we're going to some places that I don't like to talk about. But that is an important thing to understand. And I think, that's for me. I've got some others that I wrote down, but really, as far as shows go, those were my top ones. I'll throw out just the other ones I wrote down, just so get that bonus award. Not also participating,
which means all of our past guests better be listening to this episode.
Yeah.
So otherwise we'll go back and edit it.
Number 33, right when the Rona happened, we called it the economist, the scientist, and the planner. That was a great show because our three different perspectives between you being the economist, your brother the scientist, and me the planner, how we look at things so much differently.
And I like to point out, because I have re-listened to that, not quite as relevant now, unless you want to play a little Monday morning quarterback, which was, God damn, they should have listened to us. We had some good ideas in that, and they didn't listen. And that pandemic went on for quite a while, as it turned out.
Yes, it did. My next one was R.T. Custer and Vortic, the David and Goliath story, and how Vortic took a chance, had somebody that believed in them, and they took on Goliath to prove that just because they had all the money they could throw at it didn't mean that Vortic was wrong and they were right. They held their ground, stood their ground, and ended up winning a huge court case right when we did that show. And then my last one was a fairly recent one, which was with J.R. Rivera and Focus is a Superpower. Yeah, that one, yeah, JR was great. It was fun, it was emotional, and there's so much power, and just the title of it, there's so much truth in that being able to focus on something is a superpower. So I don't know, Camden, do you have any that you
Yeah. Yeah, so I had two that I really these were on my honorable mentions that I hadn't already honorably mentioned. But I think the really interesting is both of these were like, we get a lot of entrepreneurs who have stories that are a little bit more like fantastical, almost, in the sense of like the David versus Goliath stories and like those type of things. Those are all amazing, but the two that come to mind that I wrote down are more like real raw entrepreneurial stories. And the first one was Chris Wright of the pub, Pikes Peak Brewing, how he just talked about the incremental way that he approached it, and how he had the most of the we talk about the shiny object one, chase the shiny object. He had the most shiny object syndrome I think I've ever seen, and he tamed it and he built it into his culture that you could still have that, but you could keep moving forward, and the incremental progress and all those type of things is something that is such a real lesson for people. And then the other one was episode 108 with Josh Bynum down here, my buddy Josh, and just the bootstrap real, like, I got 2 extra hours in my day, so I'm going to go start a business that takes 2 hours per day type of person. And it's amazing. Every time I talk with him, by the way, I chatted with him last week. We got to get him back on the show soon. He's up to, I think, like, he's got like 25 bounce houses now. He's doing it all throughout Tucson. He's got the candle website. He's flipping candles like crazy, all that kind of stuff, and still doing the tires. And he's still a registered nurse. He's not nursing right now, but he still went through all that kind of stuff. And it is just, Josh to me is just like the epitome of like the bootstrap entrepreneur story. And so that was my other honorable mention there.
All right. So what'd you learn today?
We always had curiosity as a driving factor behind the show until about 120-ish episodes ago, when we realized we were saying it about 20 times per show. And ever since then, and I'll show it for the YouTube people because this is in every single one of my notes if I can get it right. You got right there that says curious, and that says O and C. And I keep score every single podcast ever since that of who is saying curious the most. And usually I lose that. I say it too much. But the talking about being lifelong learners, learning goes back to your curiosity. And curiosity is such an important thing because it shows how genuine you're being inside of the moment. Thinking back to the episode with Elton talking about Afghanistan, the reason that, even though he had such a personal connection to it, the reason he didn't do the you don't understand, young whippersnapper, you don't know the army, the reason he didn't do that is because he knew I was coming from a place of curiosity. Because he could tell that it was just genuine curiosity of, I don't have an agenda, I just want to hear your opinion on this. And curiosity is really the difference of being like the devil's advocate or angel's advocate, as Dr. Gruder corrected me to on that episode. Another shout out.
Yep.
That's another one. But of being the angel's advocate there, of trying to poke holes in things versus just being the contrarian who wants to bring things down. Because contrarians don't have curiosity. It's just negativity. So that's what I learned. How about you today, Dad?
Well, I mean, to add into that, you can't learn what you think you already know, right? I mean, that's
right.
There's so many people out there that are so closed off because of that. And I would say for me, it's just a reminder of how much fun this is. I joke with people. I don't, not too many people bring it up anymore, or the situation doesn't bring it up. But when we first start, one of the things that when we first started the show, I used to tell people is I was assured a 1 hour block of time once a week with my son. And, when you think about it in that sense, and if you were to do some math and the adding up, and I think I want to say it was Jesse Itzler. I may have referenced this on the show one time too, talking about doing the math on how much time he had left with his dad or his mom. When you start to think, well, I go and visit them 2 or 3 times a year. And when you do some math on that, and how how much time that really is not that much when you do the math on life.
Yeah.
But with that being said, what I like to say in this, and that reminder and the learning of, yeah, this is pretty cool that I get to do this with my son, and not many people get to do these sort of things with their son or daughter or whatever. The guy who started a podcast right before us with his daughter and called it The Old Man and the Kid, which was what we were originally going to call this show.
Is he still going? Have you checked?
No, I haven't. That makes me want to check, because you know what? Hey,
I'm gonna do a Google while you finish up.
Dude, if you are still out there doing it, we want to have you on the show. If you're not, we win. And we got the better name anyways, because you know what? The Cam Otis show, and our buddy Isaiah, who did the cartoon image of us 2.5 years ago, and our producer Norman, who has created the way the Cam and Otis show look, and Norman is taking ownership of our show and how he presents it to you and how he gets it out to you. Is it still out there?
No, so I found 2 other podcasts with the same name, and none of them sound like the people I remember looking up. So it seems like it has failed and be reborn through someone else 3 times since then. So, well, whatever. We got the better name.
That's right. So I thank you, sir, for starting your show just before us, because I think this is a much better. The Cam and Otis show is a much better name than not in the, I don't like to be called the old man, because
I still call you old man every episode.
Well, if you knew anything about the military, that young captain who is 26, 27 is the company commander, is referred to as the old man. So yeah, do some math on that one there, folks.
I just want to add on one thing. Is you're talking about, one of the most fun things about it is we always say it's just fun. We have fun talking with people and us talking, all that kind of stuff. I think it's hilarious, the irony looking back over 200 episodes of the joke that we make when we have people on the podcast pre-call, and it's like, we don't give us a cop-out answer like, I learned that it's fun to talk with Cam and Otis, and it's, I learned that I should, one of the ones that we get that sounds like a cop-out answer, and we usually bust their balls like it's a cop-out answer, but it's really not, is the learning of what you were just saying there, of how cool it is that we get to do this, because most people don't. And yeah, I'm sure you can pull some other example out there, but just being able to have these conversations, exchanging ideas, pushing back on each other, going through all these different stories, all that kind of stuff, that's the best part of the show. And that's why it should be the Cam and Otis show instead of the old man and the kid.
There you go.
And I ain't no kid no more.
That's right. Yeah, you're just a young whippersnapper. Get off my lawn. All right, Camden, run us out.
All right, well, we got a test on this, because if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the pups are behind me. And if I haven't joked about this on the show, when I do the outro, the big one, Loogie there, will come running over to my door every time I'm doing the outro. So you'll have to watch for me and see if he sits up there.
If he goes.
All right. Well, thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis show, and a special thanks to our guests, Loogie and Gumbo, for joining us today. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis show on Instagram and Facebook, and please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Videos of the podcast are on our YouTube page, and you can always get a full archive of our episodes at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.